Okay, doing a quick sound check. Sound check, can anybody hear me out there? Okay, can y'all tell me how the sound quality is? Because I'm trying to use these iPods as a microphone. I'm not sure it works. Okay. So, generally the first 5 minutes or so on most live streams, people are kind of strolling in. So real quickly, I'll just kind of break the ice. Hello, I'm Sean Graham, and this is our live stream for the Turning Basics video that we did on Mandrel. Basically, the Tuesday after I upload a long classroom style video, I would do a Q&A. So if you want to ask a question of me in the chat, I'll first answer my Patreon and the comments I got on the videos themselves, and then I'll go to the chat and answer any questions I see there. There is a lot of communication going on in the chat as y'all are communicating with each other. So if there's a question for me, please put like 3 question marks in front of your question. So as I scroll, I can identify those. 3 question marks and then ask your question just helps me out to find you. Otherwise, y'all feel free to answer each other's questions or chit chat, tell jokes, whatever you want. Make fun of me all you want. While people are coming in, I'll just give you a quick tour. As many of y'all know, we just moved into this shop at the beginning of this year, and it's been constantly working. One of the reasons why I have not been as productive as making videos is that we have been, let's see, can I reverse this? I don't know how to reverse. Okay. Well, Dad did get our dust collecting in set up. He's got a shoot down to wherever I work. I've never worked with a dust collector like that before, so I just had to build me something. He tried a bunch of different stuff with his. Comes out right there, and as you can see, it comes down. And he built this setup right here. It goes on a peg. Can you see the peg? And that goes in a hole somehow, like that, so that he can basically have a dust collector on his setup. He also finally set up his vacuum chuck. We did lose his vacuum in the move somehow. His stuff went into storage for a few years as they built their house. But he was on Craigslist and he came across a really high-end vacuum setup. Somebody who had passed away, they were selling it out, and he just got a great deal on that one, so he was able to get his dream vacuum chuck setup. He uses that quite a bit in his turnings. And if you come around to the back of the shop, we got the dust collector all hooked up, and it's a Clearview Cyclone. Has a 5 horsepower bowder on it. I found a 55-gallon drum. We bought a top for it and hooked that all up in the filter right there. So those are the major changes to our shop. Sorry, I'm kind of doing the face camera. Something I've been working on a little bit different is trying to learn to weld. I've been building up 3 of these rack stands, which got 2 right there, and 1 I've got to grind. I was working on that right before here. And those are going to go out in this little garden area, which has kind of been a welding practice project for me, and I did those hangers 2 days ago. And that'll be a stand that goes right there. And I will just start planting trees since I'm a woodworker, and as the shoots come up, I'll give away trees. So kind of recycling what I do. And we're back in here where I'm set up to do the Turning Basics series right now. And as usual, every morning, I'm doing tops. I need to have probably another 2,000 done before August. So I turn, 50 tops or so a day if I can. So real quickly, I'll scan through chat to see how we're doing. Dad said he might swing by to help out, but he might not. Okay, I'll scroll to the top. Hello, DJ England, huh? Oh, you're past midnight. You need to go to bed. I will archive this. The link will be in the Turning Basics series for this video that I'm answering questions for, so you can always come back to it later if you fall asleep. Lubbock, lots of family out there, or that I did. Missouri, Bill Mueller. Rick Taylor from Clayton, Alabama. Hello. Sounds quiet. Sounds good. Everyone has their speakers set differently. North Carolina, South Australia. Well, the whole idea for me doing all this welding stuff, because it is outside the realm of my channel, is I do plan towards the end of this year of building a tiny, a teardrop trailer, and give y'all a sneak peek of what it is. Everyone's popular with teardrops, and I'm actually going to be using it as a business thing because I'm not much of a camper, but if I want to travel around the country, I just can't afford hotels, so this will allow me to do symposiums and stuff like that, and I can just camp at a local place or in somebody's yard or pasture or something like that. But most teardrop trailers, something like that, it's all plywood. You look at every single one of them, even the ones that were done in Fine Woodworking magazine, they are basically plywood. They have a 2x4 across the top, the ribs across the top here, that are pocket hole to that plywood. It seems to be the most rickety thing out there. And if any of y'all follow Mr. Miller, he does a lot of Vardos, basically the old gypsy wagons that you traveled around Europe in the 18th and 19th century. So what I'm thinking about doing is timber framing it. I will bent lamination a frame, mortise and tenon the substructure, and use timber framing techniques to join the whole thing together. So the frame itself will be locked together and just will not be able to destroy even if you tipped it over. Or those plywood ones that are, they'd be very tippy. Most of their strength comes from they put one plywood right down the center to connect the two sides. But if you understand that one, it's still breakable. So the whole reason I am trying to learn to weld is because I have to have a custom frame to attach that to. So I need to be able to weld up a trailer for me to do that. So yes, it is metalworking, but is going so that I can do a really cool woodworking project. Okay. Rex, I know Carl, and he has a really cool mobile wood turning setup. Yeah, he has a he's got a box trailer. He travels, but he also drags it behind a motorhome. He is retired. I don't know if it's a post office or something like that, but he has a steady income other than wood turning that kind of subsidizes it, because I'm not sure. If you look at the numbers, I don't see how he is actually sustaining his lifestyle with what he's doing on the turning world. But that's what's nice. If you work hard your entire life and you develop a retirement plan, you can do that kind of really cool stuff in your retirement. A working retirement, but it's great. So yeah, he's got a cool setup. My plan is I really want to have do drag the trailer behind a truck so that I can load my truck up with tools. That way that I can drop the trailer off at a yard, a field, or a campsite and take all my tools to demo, symposium, or disaster relief, or anything like that. Or if I'm doing a collab with somebody, I can bring tools. So I can basically have a tool tank for a truck. And just that's just where I can sleep and edit videos and upload them. That's all that needs to be. Yeah, the unknown turner was here, and there's still some shavings over there. Guy or girl doesn't clean up after themselves. As it turns out, yes, I'm going to film the teardrop, and I'm going to use it as an explanation of timber framing techniques, hand tool techniques, just on a very small scale. So even people that aren't interested in that project can do it. But I also will hopefully come up with plans, because I haven't seen anybody else do any kind of camper the way this was, other than Mr. Miller, but he does Vardos. It's a little bit different. And basically, we're building a teardrop like a piece of furniture. And it'll be a little show-off piece, so when I go to symposiums, if people want to see that kind of stuff, you know, wooden door handles, that kind of stuff. Okay, Ross, any good advice starting a small business out of your house? It's a very snarky, smart-ass response, but have a secondary source of income for the first, 5-6 years. Because most small businesses, that development, fine, even though you might have a high growth curve, the high cost curve is there until you get things worked out. And I don't know very many businesses that aren't, but it's one of those things that if you don't have a high investment in the beginning, then if it's easy to get into a business, a lot of people will get into the business. There has to be some kind of obstacle for you to solve, to get across, to start your business, or a solution to a problem that nobody else can do that will lead to pretty good success. Amazon lost money for years. Granted, they made money on their stock sale price, but the business model took, 20-30 years before they started turning a profit. But once he got that set up, he's earning $1 billion a day, because he's got something that can't be duplicated easily. But it took a while to build that up. And that's an extreme example, but that's basic business. So start out small, have a secondary source of income that can cover you is always good advice. Okay. Sorry, I don't know how to mute this to golf. Okay, so real quickly, let's get started. This Turning Basics series was, where's the lathe? There it is. See if I can get the lathe and face in. Okay, Turning Basics. This section was all on mandrel turning. I did that one because I've always felt that pin turning was an easy win for beginning turners. So the first section of it, where we're actually producing stuff, I thought would be a good thing to do mandrel turning on. The first video in this series was on the lathe itself. The second video was on the accessories to the lathe, and the third video was mandrel turning, getting started making a mess. I did one large video, and I ended up breaking up into 3 parts. One was mainly talking about the unique tools that are mandrel turning and the basic concepts, and dove deep. And the second one is that we turned one single pin. And what a lot of people didn't recognize is I was introducing basic turning techniques. You know, I was overly exaggerating. Come on in. Touching the tool to the tool rest, touching the wood to the lathe, and I showed that picture in 3 different ways, 3 different angles, body motion, that kind of stuff. So that was the big lesson. You need a chair? The white chair's right there. You want to? Before we get started, you want to show them anything you've done here? Okay. Dad just walked in. The other thing was we were turning a spindle right here. And those were the big turning lessons. All those would be used elsewhere. Strangely, I think I made a mistake labeling it pen turning, because those 2 videos have done worse than any videos I've produced in probably past 3 years. In fact, right before this upload went, I went and looked at it, and I lost over 100 subscribers in 2 videos. Because we have a way to judge if somebody subscribes because of the video, but if somebody watches a video, unsubscribes while they're doing that video, it records that, so YouTube will know that one, so the algorithm will know that, hey, somebody watched this and said it was so bad that they unsubscribed it. Strangely, those 2 videos have an extremely high view time, meaning, you know, they're about an hour. YouTube counts videos, so if somebody watches a video for 30 seconds and clicks away, that's counts. If somebody watches a whole thing, that's a count. So if 2 people watch it, 1 person watches an hour, 1 person watches it for 30 seconds, so there's an average of 30 minutes. That's your average. Well, my average for the entire video for all the people that clicked on it, clicked away, or watched the full thing was about 20 minutes. And that's really good in this little niche market. So it's kind of mixed messages. The people that are watching it were watching a lot of it, but then I'm unsubscribing. So the reason why I didn't do the 3rd part right now, which was on the production techniques, is because I'm thinking about rebranding that video as a art market project, because that's kind of what it is. I'm telling people how to, in their first turnings, actually how to make a little bit of money doing it with production techniques with a very basic setup, so that, you know, they can turn a few hundred pens and go out and sell some of them to make some money. Also makes a great student fundraiser, and I'll do all that kind of talking in that video. But I'm going to put that video off for a week, maybe 2, just to give it some breathing room to see, so that people will forget that it's a pen turning video, and maybe it won't chase as many people away. There's only 2 comments I really got out of that one. I got ridiculed for my comment on carbide tools. And basically I told people for manual turning, don't waste your money on carbide. And then I sat there and I showed you how to use this $25 tool faster, more effectively, and more things. And people questioned why I said don't waste your money on carbide. What I probably should have done is taken 30 seconds and shown people how to sharpen this thing, because it is literally sticking on the grinder going like this, burp, burp. But I did that in an earlier video, so it's one of those things, lessons build. So if you didn't see, I should have reviewed that in the video. That would have driven my point thing. But I got a lot of hate for that one, and that might have been the people that were unsubscribing. Pardon me for a second. Okay. The next one was people questioned about drilling. I should have demonstrated drilling on the lathe, so I would do that now. If you don't want to buy a drill press, I talked about you could use a Jacob's chuck. This has that Morse taper to it. You basically clean out the Morse taper, drive that in. That's locked in. I am going to take off my live center just because it's sharp. And there are 2 ways of doing it. Obviously, both ways you're going to have to put a drill bit into your chuck. So I'm not prepared. Let me go grab a drill bit real quick. There's my drill press. Okay, so 7mm pins, 7mm. I now need a key. Okay, you put in the key, open up the jaws if people haven't seen that. Fairly simple idea. Some jaws the springs break, so you might have to push it back. This first way I'm going to show you is probably the more dangerous way. Okay. So I have that here. You can turn on your lathe. It spins. You can see how the drilling works. Now, a lot of times whenever I'm drilling the tang for a tool handle and stuff like that, this is how I would do it. And the setup is you've got a center section. What's nice about having the drill bits I use have a brad point on them. So you start out, you find a hole in the center. You can actually place that brad point on the end, and then you get yourself something to rest on that is in plane to what you're doing. And then you stand back here. You do not hold your hand up here, because if you hold your hand up here, there's a good chance you will put a hole in your hand, which is not a good thing. So what I would do is, you're sitting here, you turn the lathe on, it starts up, and you can just push it forward. And you have your hole. Real simple. The other way to do this, and yeah, now that's when I do tools. But if you're doing pins, something that you can do to really save time, this is something I was going to show in the batch production run, is I used to stick my pen mill, the thing that cleans it up, if you remember that in the video, in here, like this. And you have to watch out, because notice this is short. If you cut this in half like a pin, it's shorter than that. So a lot of times I would get a small board. Where do I have a small board? Right behind it. And you would already have the hole in it, so you're just cleaning out the brass. So I would stick the small board on the back end to press it against it, and you can basically clean up the ends with the end mill. Just like that. I don't even turn it off. And then I would go through and I'd clean up all the end mills on the lathe. Fairly simple. So that's how you would use it in the headstock. The safer way to use them is in the tailstock. And this would be a lot easier, a lot more useful if you bought the extension on it, because you can do longer stuff. grab a chuck real quick. So you have your chuck, and obviously for pins, all you would do is get a different different jaws, the spigot jaws, and they will hold the thinner thing. And now you can drill holes by starting your lathe up, bringing the speed down. The secret is to press it down here because we've got to move this over here so it's not tight, so it can rack like that. So you want to press down and forward at a slow rate and just feed your way in. It would help to have a flattened face, as your pen would be. And there we go. Press forward, smooth and easy. And you can go all the way through the block right here because it's centered down the Morse taper. And just work your way through. That's a little fast. This is actually how, when I didn't have my drill press, I would drill all the pin blanks because I would have that spigot chuck. I would just open up, drop one in, push through, pull it out, open up, drop one in, push through. This setup replaces, I'm losing everything, that little clamp thing I used in the video. So, do y'all have any questions on how you could use your lathe to drill? Okay, I'm scrolling back.
I haven't seen any questions.
Okay. Last question I answered was Ross Richards. Dad said he hadn't seen any questions. So if you have a question for me, put 3 question marks in front of it. Thank you, David. That really helps out. What are my thoughts on collet chucks? I personally have never used a collet chuck. A collet chuck is basically like a, the easiest way I know how to explain it. Do you use collet chucks, Dad?
I have them, I don't use them.
The little chalk holders you used to have as a kid, basically you would spread it out, the arms pull out, and then as you retract it in, it goes into like a Morse taper and it squeezes the thing together. That's kind of how a collet chuck works. From my experience, the people that use that the most are probably machinists, because it kind of comes from that world. Woodwork learner, spigot jaws or pen jaws. I like spigot jaws because they reach out a long way. Let me grab a set for you. Okay. So we have a normal set of jaws right here. They come up a little bit. These are serrated. Spigot jaws are taller. and ideally they are made so that they will touch all the way down the side. I find that having that for the drilling purposes that we are doing adds a lot of stability, because while this is great for a lot of stuff, when we're starting to talk about pin blanks, they're just really small and thin, and they have more flex to it than this. Having a spigot jaw go all the way down, holding it, it's a vibrations node thing. You're locking this whole section right here, so the nodes get kind of dampened if you understand it that way. So that's why I prefer spigot jaws. Okay. Sorry if I'm making y'all dizzy. I just don't quite know how to do this otherwise. Okay, so we have thought you should use a drawbar if using a Jacobs chuck in the head. That's a good point. What he is talking about is a lot of Jacobs chucks are threaded in back. And in the video I did on mandrel turning, I talked about different mandrels. You can put the screw on the back side. That would be a safe thing. I just found that when I'm drilling, I'm pressing forward, so it's never been an issue. If you're doing other kinds of turning using this Jacobs chuck, which technically I guess you could use as a collet chuck, a very small collet chuck, but if you wanted to turn brass or something like that, that would be a perfect way to do it. Yeah, you would want to put the screw thread through the back. Where did I put that? The all thread, exactly like this one right here. I have a Morse taper, a screw thread. This goes through the headstock and clamps on the back side. That would probably make it safer, but for drilling purposes, I don't think it was a major issue. Bumby, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. When I drill from the tailstock, I would lock down the stock and push the drill forward using the hand wheel. Yes, you can do that one. What they're talking about is if you have it in the tailstock, a lot of people will kind of push it forward until it just barely touches and then wind this in. The thing is, I always found that really slow, and the slower it is, it develops a lot of heat. Whereas if I push, if this bit is sharp, I can push in and get out before it gets too hot. I can also clear it out quicker because you only go in like 3/4 of an inch, and then you have to back it out a lot of times to get the shavings out so it doesn't a lot of friction. So this pushing action is more for speed, heat and speed, because if I'm doing this one, I'm doing a batch production run or something like that. Otherwise, I would probably just use if I'm just doing one item, I just do it with a gouge. It's quicker to do it that way than grabbing a Jacobs chuck and finding a bit and that kind of stuff. Another way, I mean, if you really don't even want to do a Jacobs chuck, something turners do all the time is just make a tool out of a bit. You need to find the center or something like that. There you go. Little tool with a handle. I put flats on so I get a little bit more traction. You find the center and you just push through and it'll drill a hole. You don't even have to use your tailstock or anything like that. We will be making one of these in this Turning Basics series. Okay. We are about 40 minutes in, so we'll probably go for another 10 minutes. How do you get it to sit flush in the chuck? I do that setup with the pins. I seem to blow the pins out during sanding. Okay. Toasty nip. I'm not quite sure I understand what you're asking. Is there a way you could reword that? How do you get it to sit flush in the chuck? Well, the ends are squared pretty easily, and I just bottom it out on the chuck, the face of the chuck. What do you do with the chuck? But if you're using a spigot chuck, that really shouldn't make that big a difference because there's so much of it grabbing on the end. As long as one corner is touching on the base, it should be fine. The second part of your question, I would blow the pins out during sanding. The only thing I can think of that you're asking is if you're using a somewhat of an older CA glue and you got it hot because of the friction and you had a very thin tube, that might do something with the glue, so then all of a sudden the glue would not grab onto the brass, if that's your question. How you do that one is you keep the sanding paper moving. You don't let sawdust build up on the sandpaper because two woods rubbing against each other causes fire, heat. And just not press as hard when you're sanding. That's the only thing I can think of that you were asking there. Okay. Billy, do I use any resin? Dad likes using stones or basically, he doesn't use the rock anymore. It's a man-made rock, which is a resin. I have turned resin in the past. I bought these resin blanks right here so that I could demonstrate the techniques. It's much more of a scraping and sanding technique than a cutting technique. I find that if you use cutting tools with acrylic, it kind of chips more than anything else. It comes down to profitability for me. Whenever you start putting more effort into your blanks, there's more time involved. You're not going to time as money. I don't see how you can be profitable in the types of markets with the types of customer base I do, putting that much of resources, both labor and additional materials into a product. I get on to Dad all the time about doing turquoise because that things like what the Unknown Turner did, because Dad didn't do that one, but that would take, a day or two. You do one setup, you go back, you sand it down, then you have to go back and fill in the pockets that came out, then you sand that down, then you have to go back and level it all out with the wood. It's just it's a labor nightmare, and I don't want to deal with it. I would rather just buy a piece of wood that use a piece of wood that doesn't have cracks or worms in it. It seems common sense to me, but people like the looks of it. When Dad sells stuff like that, he makes good money. Does that answer your question, Billy? Yes, I have done in the past. I don't see how to make money doing it. What are some good sites to buy used lathe equipment? I hate to say it, Craigslist.
Craigslist.
Yeah, Dad, can you tell them how you set up those filters and how you got that I showed them your vacuum pump and you just got a great deal. That was off of Craigslist, right?
Yes, the Craigslist, you have to search for the things you're looking for. I bought probably 3 one-way chucks off of Craigslist over the years. This last vacuum pump, we lost it in the move, and I've been searching for another one. this was a $2,000 vacuum pump that the guy only wanted $75 for. So, I mean, it was a good deal. So Craigslist is that. The other is join a local wood turning club, American Association of Wood Turning local chapter, and invariably there's people there buying new lathes, and they have extra lathes that they don't need anymore. So that's a good source, and you usually get a good deal on those. So Craigslist and the local clubs are two good sources for you. One of the questions that's coming up, the gentleman talked about twice turning bowls, and he was saying when he comes back on a second turning, it seems to chatter a lot. And he made a comment about the tenon being oval. When you twice turn a bowl, one of the first things you do when you finish is re-true the tenon. Which
so
means
make the tenon a little bit big, too big when you're green turning it, so that you have something to remove.
Right. Make it a little bit bigger, and then turn it around, and then be sure to get that surface flat and plane, because that flat surface on a plane, not really the circle part, but the flat surface on the plane is what it gives the strength to your chuck grip and keeps it from shattering. So you don't want it doing this. You want it flush against it, so you need to true it up every time.
And if you thrice turn something, you do this. That's the same. You have to go back and re-true the tenon when you do that. Pardon me. Okay. Dan, can I turn a pen if all I have is a chisel, an electric drill, and a vise? I don't see why not. In fact, you can make a pen. Pins don't have to be round. If you can drill a hole in it, use a pen kit, and then just use a Sloyd knife, you can make a really cool faceted pen. And just whittling out the sides. Pardon me for a second, I need to plug in my phone. Battery looks like it is going low. I got a low battery sign. Okay. DOS Bomber, Billy, he turns Aluminite. Aluminite is a key brand. There's quite a few people that specializes in in turning resins. In fact, that's probably the most popular subsection in wood turning. It seems one of the reasons why so many people will dive and just turn pens for their entire career is because they get into that casting element. One of the local guys started an entire company, Cactus Juice, many of y'all might have heard of, is a guy that started out turning pens. He then started turning acrylic pens, and then he went around and he picked out the pear cactuses, what do they call that? Yeah, pear cactus, right? The palm-sized cactuses with yellow flowers. And basically he would find those that had rotten on the side of the road, so they turned white and all the grain had gone away, and the skeleton portion of that one, he would cast that and he'd create a really cool honeycomb-like effect with colored resins. And because he became so famous for developing that technique, he called the resins he started selling Cactus Juice, because that's where the name came from. But yeah, he had started an entire company just supplying resin material for other people to create their own resin blanks. So you can dive deep down that black hole of resin. It just comes down to the fact that I don't know how you make money. And I don't have a secondary source of income. So, okay. Casey J. Wilson, what Chuck model do you prefer on that jet lathe? I did a whole video on Chucks if you want to talk about that one, but I personally believe the old original one-way, the one with the grips that they got sued for using, so they went and made the Talon. I think that's the best one for the one way. I use it every single day. It's the one sitting on my one-way lathe over there. I use it for turning things. I like the fact that the bars, I actually brace against the tool rest. If it's really tight and I can bang it, I feel those whammy bars work much more efficiently than finding the key to turn it. It's the original one-way chuck. They call it the one-way chuck. And those have been out there. He was talking about where do you get good used equipment. The turning clubs are great, and it's kind of morbid, but most wood turners are baby boomers, and the baby boom generation is getting smaller. So quite often nowadays you will have family members that are getting rid of entire shops, and while you might not be able to snag the lathe or stuff like that, a lot of times they'll have stuff in drawers, and a lot of times there are things like chucks or drills or stuff like that that you can, don't take advantage of anybody, but you can get good deals on. Okay, one message is held for review. Okay, I don't know why that one was blocked, and that was from As Turns Out, and all he was doing is saying ha 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 ha. Billy, no, other than brass, I've not turned metal. And turning brass is just like wood, just same tools, just go slower. Strange, brass, I don't know why, but I don't consider that a metal, just because it's so soft. Well, thank you, Bumby. That's very nice of you. Yeah, Billy said, Billy said resin's a whole new world and it explodes if you go too fast and chips constantly. You have to slow down with it. It's also one of the areas I think carbide is becoming more popular, has become popular because scraping cuts seem to work pretty well with resins, especially if you got weird stuff embedded inside the resins. But mainly, I hate to tell you this, whenever I turn resin pans and stuff like that, I use a skew. You just have to do a little bit different technique, but you will get ribbons of resin off of it. But if it chips out, you get little chunks. So I hate to say this, a lot of times I just leave it a little bit thicker than I would wood and just start sanding at a rougher course to get past that to get the final shape I want when I'm working with resin. Sanding goes quick on resin. David G, yeah. You can email me, you can contact me through Patreon if it's a specific on topic. There's a little notice thing on direct messages. For some reason I don't get all the messages when people leave comments on post. But if you just direct message me through them, I get it. Or you can go to my website and just email me. No big deal. Bill Miller, you might want to tell people more about the Woodworkers Guild email list. I do not know what that is. I don't subscribe to that. No problem, James. Oh, the video froze? I'm so far back that mine frozen 20 minutes ago and I've been just talking to nobody for 20 minutes.
I've been hearing you.
Okay. Question, the OG, in the first video you showed a device that can change the wobble. It had multiple pinholes. Do you think that would possible for turn a triangle shaped pen with it? There's no way to do a triangle on the, oh, I'm sorry, I understand what you said. Yeah, it will be a three-sided curve, but it's not going, you're not going to be able to do a true triangle with flats, but you can get a curve like that. In fact, Cindy Drozda has a really cool video on doing, she calls it offset twisted boxes, but that's the same concept. You would just put it in, you would use this device, which has 3 different holes on the back. And if you notice, this thing has screws right here. Well, basically you take those screws out and this part right here removes off so that you can actually, if you find one hole that you like, say this one right here, so it's turning way offset. Well, you would leave it in that setting. You would turn these things right here off, the corners, and then you would unscrew this, rotate that 1/3 of 360, 120 degrees, 120 degrees, screw that back on, and they have enough things around there, you can do that one, and then turn it again, and then do that same rotation, turn it again, and you will get 3 cutoffs that you could come down to a point, and it will give you a 3-sided curved triangle point thing like that. So you would end up with a fat pin. You could do that. Though with a pin, that's designed more for things, you know, size of your fist. For a pin, you probably just make something with screws. You can do the same concept. Misfit 74, what size skew do you recommend? This right here is the one I've been using for most of my turning career. It's 3/4 of an inch. I rehandled it. It was a crown one. If you notice, I rounded over the base right here on my belt sander to get it smoother. This is one I use most for my top spinning. There's a guy by the name of Woodturner 21, Richard Fidley. He is a phenomenal skew turner, professional out of England, and he uses a 1-inch one, so I've converted most of my spindle work to 1 inch just to follow the pack. But 3/4 to 1 inch would probably be good for most of the spindle work you would doing. I do have a 2 3/8 inch, I think it's 2 3/8 inch skew that I use quite a bit. But that's not for delicate work, it's for mass removal, and that is from Alan Lacer. He custom makes those himself, and it's kind of a cool, let me go grab it. Also, if any of y'all are within a 4 or 5 hour drive of Waco, Texas, at the end of August is probably the best educational opportunity you will have in the form of SWAT, Southwest Area Turners Association's Symposium, and Alan Lacer will be there. I believe he is even doing a demonstration this year on this tool. So here's a 3/4 of an inch, and here's the massive one. And I just like it because if I'm doing planing cuts, if you watch my video on making mounts, you can see me waste away huge amount of material with this thing. If you're making nice long sweeping cuts, the higher on really large items, it just work. I like it. But one of the cool things is why these things are so expensive. Notice how thick it is here, and it tapers this way in addition to this way, in addition to that way. This is not just a bar stock. There's a lot of machining that goes into this thing. And it starts out down here. It's a good 5/8 thick down here, tapering down. So. But to answer your question, just get a 1 incher and be done with it. Okay, I forgot where I was at. It was scrolling on me. Stuart Southern Baker is getting more difficult to earn good money with workshops when competing with businesses like Flat Pack IKEA. I am going to disagree with you. Flat pack has been around since the wagon age. People going across the country, they were buying flat pack stuff. A lot of the Craftsman stuff is flat pack. You bought it, you assembled it out there. They didn't have the shop out there. I hate to say it, but throughout all time, woodworking has never been a high income profession, except for the people that own the shops. So I mean, if you're working out of your shop, out of your garage, your history, it's going to be a lower middle class income. That's just how it's been throughout history. You know, some people make a lot of money because of the name or a unique thing. I'm thinking the likes of Maloof, stuff like that, but that's the exception that proves the rule. Even the Blackworth, the black guy, after the Civil War, he became famous for his woodworking. It was very basic woodworking, and you could even say it was flat packable. But the reason why he became famous because he had a shop. Yeah, he was a black man at that time that had a own business. He wasn't just working for somebody else. So he'd come up with the designs, and other people would make it. Kind of like the Green brothers had the Hall brothers to make stuff. This has never been a craft where you're going to become rich. You will consistently make income if you get a business, but you won't become rich. Sorry, off my soapbox. It's a quick history lesson. What lathe do you recommend for beginners? I have a video on lathes, which lathes for you, that kind of stuff. One of the reasons why I recommend mini lathes, because they're cheap, they're ubiquitous, they're everywhere. Get a jet mini lathe. That's a one in the mini class. I think jet is the only way to go. Okay, in the MID, like this one right here, there's lots of competition. Just because the jet's been around so long, they have a good reputation. They do last for a long time. I've gone through 3 of them. I do wear them out, but I'm much more abusive than most people to them. But the reason why I recommend it is because it's something that you can carry around. So if you ever want to take a class with the wood turning club, you can take that to that person's garage, plug into a 110 unit, and you can have a bunch of different lathes there. So after you upgrade to a bigger lathe, it's such a little portion of your total turning investment, you'll hang on to it for that one aspect right there. If you wanted to get a one and done and you know that it's just going to be a hobby in your garage, get a MIDI. Pardon me. Sean, what's the typical grinding angle on a skew? Dad, isn't that 35 degrees combined?
35, 35, so you got 70. No, yeah, 35, 35 combined.
35, 35, 70, I think is about the norm. Something like that's normal. After a while, you get it close to it, then you stop kind of worrying about the exact numbers. If it's close, it's close. It'll cut. The wood doesn't really know. The wood doesn't know the difference. Johnny's Chop Shop. Dad will have to answer that question. He's asking how much would you charge for a private lesson?
I don't do private lessons.
Oh, he held up a big 0, and I thought he was being an idiot, and he said, I don't do private lessons. We really don't have the space or the facilities to do it, even though we had this shop. There's an insurance issue, all that kind of stuff, so that's why I don't do private lessons here either. Cannot be mass produced. Misfit 74, I assume he's asking straight grind or radius and what angle. I assume you're talking about the skew. Alan Lacer teaches to have a straight grind over 1/3 of it, and then he comes down to the standard 70-degree angle this way, right here, but he makes it into a curve. What angle is a curve? Well, the advantage of a curve is it's all angles. I'm getting more and more to the point where I'm just, the more I sharpen this tool, the more I use it, my curve is getting straighter and straighter and straighter. I would tell you a lot of the pros use a very straight blade. Alan Lacer, who I follow quite a bit, and obviously I bought his tools, he prefers the curve. I find the curve is less grabby, you get less catches with it. It just takes more skill to sharpen it. it might be a little bit less flexible a tool. Leave it at that. Like everything, there's no one way is the best way. There's always payoffs and consequences. James Nelson, he'd like to know too, straight or curve? Well, both. 1/3 is straight, and I love having that straight section, even on this one right here, because a lot of times when I'm peeling, I don't come in straight like this. I will come in and I'll have this 1/3 of it, that straight angle, parallel to the work I'm working, so I can make a nice smooth peel, and then I can kick it at the very end to indent that little edge, so I can get a good seat, so I know that there's no schmuck in that one corner. Then the curve section I use this way. That might be why I never use this with a tip down like that, because that curve transition is straight. That's right where the sweet spot would be. I've never developed that skill. Again, consequences for having it, features for having it. Woodwork learner, what do you think about using a lathe as a pin press? Great idea, just a little bit slow. I know a lot of people do it. I didn't cover that in the video because I just didn't think about it, because back when I did start out, I did try that a few times. I just found it really slow and unnecessarily slow. What do I use to film your videos? We started using a GoPro. I use my iPhone quite a bit. And then I have a D55 Nikon that's going on 6 years old now, that I dropped a little while ago, so it's acting funny, so I need to buy another one. I thought I was going to pick one up a few months ago, but didn't quite have the cash at the time. But I'll probably get another one just like it, because I think it served me well and I'm used to it. How did you come up with your lathe tool storage? Basically, my lathe tool storage is, I have two. This is my main one. It was an Instagram thing I did a long time ago. It's a one-day build. It's just a trestle table. I don't know if you can see that one. I basically pull tools off of that, and they go into my stool. That stool right there. And that sits at the end of my lathe right here when I'm doing production runs. So I have the 5 or 6 tools that I'm using just right here. I use them, I put them up, and whenever I'm done with that project, they go back in that thing. But that's only because I don't really have that many tools, and I only use about 1/3 of those regularly. Now, Dad, on the other hand, his storage is in layers. One layer behind another layer, behind another layer, behind another layer, and then you turn around to the other wall, and you have more layers. So he has more tools, he needed more storage, so his solution is for his setup and how he likes to work. Mine is for how I like to work, and of course, we have different opinions on how you work. Okay, we're actually about 10 minutes past, so final questions if anybody has one. Mr. Bumby, how dare you disagree with me? Even if you're in the UK, Scotland, where our ancestors came from, because we have Scottish and Viking blood, because obviously they came over there and they're all mixing and stuff like that, and then y'all shipped us over to America. You cannot disagree with me, Mr. Bumby. How dare you? Oh yeah, flat packing campaign furniture, the Romans. They have documentation that the Romans had flat pack furniture. Schwarz came up with the whole campaign furniture, but he was basing it off of the British Empire. But it goes, the British stole it from the Romans. We probably stole it from the Egyptians. We probably sold it from some African company, African country. Nothing new. It's all just modifications of the old stuff. Brian McGuire, have you ever had any luck laminating Osage orange? My question to you is, why would you laminate it? It's extra labor. Just get a bigger piece of Osage orange. That great tree grows huge. Osage orange is my favorite wood. In fact, yeah, I have it in my mounts, and I would love to produce another 200-300 of those. I have it on my tools, handles. I love that stuff. It turns brilliantly with a very sharp tool. You don't have to do much sanding to get a good polish on it. I don't laminate wood. Laminating wood takes too time and it's more labor intensive. Just go get a better piece of wood, in my opinion. It's one of those things that a lot of people ask me in the hand tool world. Well, I'm telling them use hand planes and stuff like that, and they're saying, well, if the grain's reversing, all that kind of stuff. I go, well, why did you pick a piece of wood with reversing grain? Pick a better piece of wood. Okay, looks like the last question. I hope you all enjoyed this. I will archive it to our channel. The next video in the Turning Basics series will probably be cross-labeled as an art market video. So I will show people with very limited skills who are just learning the turnings basics how to batch produce pins and then go from there. After that, we will go into spindle turning with a lot of skew work and skew practice. The project will probably be magic wands. I will show you how to make a kinetic magic wand, which is different from every other magic wand you have thought about because it actually has kinetic elements to it as a mass producible project that you can make to practice your skew chisels and dramatically improve the speed and quality of your turning because you will have to do less sanding. That will all be in the spindle turning section of the Turning Basics series. Hope you enjoyed this. I guess I will talk to y'all next time. Have fun. Now I'll get the close-up of my forehead as I figure out how to turn this thing off. Not that button. Oh, come on. You think it's just the X?